Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, Blue Marble Riders. There's a lot out there right now about KTM's serious financial issues, self-administration, $2 to $3 billion worth of debt, depending on who you listen to, stockpiles of unsold motorcycles just sitting there, massive warranty claims, poor marketing decisions, and their potential demise. But this video isn't about that. This video doesn't have to do with cams made of cheese or ridiculously small oil galleries and mesh screens in the engines of the 790s and 890s, or locking out features after 1,000 kilometers. There's enough of that out there. The title, though, does need some explaining. That is what this video is about. Bear with me, we need to do some time traveling. Before we time travel, you might not have noticed the bike I'm riding, although some of you will now be cottoning on to how this does relate to KTM's future and its past. KTM is a well-established company. They were formed in 1934, a niche manufacturer, a boutique brand, call it what you will. They were a minor player in the world of motorcycles. Let's whip forward to 2013, a year after KTM's troubles really started. They bought Husqvarna, but not really. They bought a brand that represented what used to be Husky. Husqvarna were probably at one time the most celebrated motocross team on the planet. Think the Ferrari of dirt, but Swedish. But Husky hit financial trouble in the early 80s like many did, and was bought on April Fool's Day 1986 by Italian brand Cagiva of elephant fame. That's elephant with an F. You can't write this stuff. Under Cagiva, the Huskies started to resemble elephants and were no longer those svelte motocross-winning thoroughbreds. Later, Cagiva, having sucked the technology from its blood, Husky was sold to BMW, who thought they were getting a motocross heritage, but instead got a white elephant. Many Husqvarna engineers refused to move to Italy when the brand was originally sold to Cagiva. Instead, some started designing and manufacturing motorcycles in a woodshed in a Husaberg in Sweden. The engineers had no business plan, finances, or sales team, but what they lacked there they more than made up for in technical innovation. They adopted the mantra, ready to race. Does that sound familiar? Husaberg entered their bikes in races and immediately started creating waves, but technical superiority and good results on track couldn't help them with their marketing and slow sales, and they were bought by KTM in 1995 after Husaberg had already won 3 of their 6 World Enduro Championships and before winning 3 of the FIM 500cc Motocross World Championships. Ready to race indeed they were. At first, KTM left Husaberg in Sweden and the brand grew, but as self-appointed premium brand themselves, KTM had an identity problem. In a name, it was Husaberg. KTM wanted some of that action. They wanted the technology, they wanted the status. So in 2003, Husaberg production was moved to the KTM factory in Austria, along with the development department. Colloquially, this was known as the Skunk Works, after the Lockheed Martin secret Palmdale plant where highly classified research and development programs and exotic aircraft platforms like the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was developed. In the Husaberg Skunk Works plant, they were secretly working on a revolutionary new engine and a super light chassis combination which to this day draws admiring glances and has people muttering mass centralization, among other expletives. By 2009, the revolutionary fuel-injected 70-degree engine was launched in a super-light chassis by Husaberg entirely separately from KTM, creating their revolutionary FE and FS series bikes. While the bikes were extremely light, they felt even lighter because the engines were uniquely canted forward. How could a 570 feel as flickable as a 250? The drawback was the Husaberg engineers had created something that was essentially a loss leader. While the engine and chassis were so technically advanced, they were also very expensive to build. KTM AG are a lot of things, but benevolent they are not. Rather than continue to use the Husaberg as a premium brand, KTM started to siphon off the technology. Then Husaberg's previous slogan, Ready to Race, was purloined by KTM as its own. You may recognize it now. Husaberg then had to adopt the slogan Four-Stroke Force and subsequently Pure Enduro as they began to be more and more marginalized. Their identity, technology, and success stolen, the final coup de grace was in 2012 when their 70-degree engines were deemed too expensive and Husabergs were sold for 2 more years with downgraded vertical KTM units. By 2013, Husaberg was a blue and white and yellow KTM. Sound familiar? In 2014, Husaberg celebrated its 25th, but last, anniversary. In January 2013, Stefan Piera, the controlling shareholder with 51% of KTM AG, purchased Husqvarna from BMW. Although Husaberg and Husqvarna were not merged, it was decided by both KTM and Piera Industry that Husaberg brand would cease to exist, reuniting Husaberg with Husky from their shared roots 25 years ago, it was claimed. Husqvarna then used what was left of Husaberg's technology and colors while keeping the better-known brand name of Husqvarna, albeit not in their traditional red. Unlike the purchase of Husaberg, I'm not sure what the purpose of buying Husqvarna really was. It bought no tech, no intellectual property, and real market share, or current identity really, just a badge. And this, I feel, is the real catalyst for KTM's problems. People just aren't buying their bikes. Their brands have a lack of identity. What is a KTM? How is it different from a Husqvarna? What is a Husqvarna? How is it different from a KTM? Instead of encouraging the marks they acquired as assets to prosper and carry on doing what they did well independently, they stripped them of their intellectual property, their technological assets, their identity, and in Husaberg's case, killed it off completely. This does seem an extremely radical and expensive way to justify painting your motorcycles a different color. I've never been a fan of the color orange, but now we have KTMs in white, blue, and yellow. Soon they may also come in GasGas red and MV Agusta Aggo silver and red. After all, the Husqvarna 701 is a rebranded KTM 690 with different plastics. And then there's the Pylon Duke combinations. The only wise choice KTM made in all of this was to kill the 890 so it didn't compete with the Norden 901. Now back to that thumbnail. Kleptomania. It's a disorder that involves repeatedly being unable to resist urges to steal items that you generally don't really need. I'm not sure KTM needed to duplicate their bikes wrapped in Swedish color schemes once, let alone twice, then to replicate that mistake by purchasing GasGas. MV Agusta is a niche brand like Husaberg was, and I wonder if they will be around for KTM's 100th anniversary. I wonder if KTM will be around for their own 100th anniversary. It would be sad to see their demise, but I suppose some would say that's progress or perhaps karma. For what it's worth, in my opinion, KTM won't go under. There's a good chance in the short term that they'll be bailed out by Bajaj Auto from India, who already own 48% of them, and they will make even more KTMs in India and China for a while. It's ironic, but perhaps Bajaj Auto or another manufacturer will even appropriate the tech and the colors before they kill them off. CF Moto, ready to race, anyone?